who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Laura, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the December 14th issue of the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Judy Jupiter, a 76-year-old social media star, is a Gen Z at heart. In the 1970s, she photographed Andy Warhol and Debbie Harry on wild nights at Studio 54. Now she's chronicling a new generation. By Alex Vadukul. On a brisk morning or afternoon in Washington Square Park, a petite 76-year-old woman wearing Versace sunglasses and a hoodie studied the scene around her. She goes by Judy Jupiter, and as buskers strummed guitars and New York University students read books on benches, she was searching for something. "It's just a feeling," she said. "When I know, I know." She spotted a tall young man wearing a red Balenciaga hoodie and Timberlands. She raced up to him, phone in hand, and started filming. "Oh, look at you," she said. She pelted him with questions. "What's your name? What's your Instagram? What do you do?" He said he was a 21-year-old model named Waylon Rose. Jupiter hit him with her signature question. "Want to do a spin for me?" He twirled for her with a catwalk flourish. "I love these baggy pants," she said. "You're Judy Jupiter, aren't you?" he said. "I recognize your voice from videos. Your posts have been getting around. I guess I've been hoping one day I might run into you and that you'd stop me." Among the Instagram and TikTok set, Judy Jupiter has emerged as one of New York's most improbable chroniclers of downtown street style. With an approach that's one part Bill Cunningham and one part Studs Terkel, she has broken through the algorithm with her affable manner and borderline invasive curiosity. She's just as compelled by a model skater wearing Rick Owens as she is a philosophy major in a thrift shop scarf. "I love the Gen Zs," Jupiter said. "I love their attitude. They think the world is in a bad place and that we've got to make it better. That's their thing. They're into making things better." "I'm a Gen Z too," she added. "I moved to New York from Detroit at 24, and I'm still 24 in my head, so they're my people. The Gen Zs only like talking to people their own age, and since they can tell I'm like them, they talk to me. If someone looks over 30, I don't even interview them." "They all saw my Sabrina Carpenter video," she continued. "I still don't understand why I went viral. There's no answers. There's no 411. Jupiter's brush with Ms. Carpenter last summer brought legions of followers to her TikTok and Instagram accounts. The clip, which has netted millions of views, shows Jupiter interviewing the pop star as she walks through Soho with her entourage. The video's charm comes from the fact that Jupiter is unaware of who Ms. Carpenter is. "Hi, how are you? What's your name?" "Sabrina," Ms. Carpenter replies. "You look spectacular," Jupiter says. Her later street interviews with other young celebrities unknown to her, like Troye Sivan and Kyrie Irving, only added to her social media mystique. "I never know who these people are," Jupiter said. "I don't read the newspaper or follow the news. I cry when I read the news, so why would I? But I don't get starstruck. Back in the 1970s, I met every celebrity there ever was at Studio 54, where I was a house photographer, so I don't get starstruck." As evening approached in Soho, she scanned the streets with darting eyes. "Over 600,000 people are following me now," she said. "It scares the hell out of me. How many are stalkers? I live alone. I don't have a dog. I don't have a gun. I've got waft spray." Crossing Houston Street, she talked about her interactions with Gen Z. "Someone told me I'd need to heart more and comment back more to them, but I don't always understand their language. They call me a goat a lot. I don't know what it means. I always have to look up what they're saying on Google, and sometimes Google doesn't even know. I like them better as a generation than the millennials, she went on. The millennials stopped freedom of speech and got on guys for putting their arm on a girl. But I hear Gen Zs aren't having sex. I think lots of them also don't have jobs, because I interview most of them while they're just hanging out in the middle of the workday. But I'm not down on people having rich parents. It's nice to be taken care of. When she arrived outside the Brasserie Balthazar, someone called out from the corner, "Judy!" It was a scrum of downtown content creators, and they were all hanging out, taking a break from filming. One of them, David Carmi, runs at Confidence Heist, in which he asks people what makes them confident. Another, Preppy Pete, runs the street style account at Gotham Galleria. Get anything good today? Jupiter asked. I got this one girl on Spring Street who gave me an amazing answer when I asked what's her purpose, Mr. Carmi said. He broke away to approach someone with his microphone. Excuse me, miss, you look really confident. What's your secret? Afterward, Mr. Carmi considered Jupiter's entry to the content creator economy. Getting out here into the streets to make content, it's uncomfortable to start, he said. With Judy, she's especially targeting Gen Z, and I think she's showing people that by just approaching a stranger and asking them to do a spin, she's asking them to be themselves. Lately, Jupiter has started making money from her content. She gets requests from record labels to promote their artists with staged versions of her whimsical street interviews, for which she charges up to $2,500. Her sponsored videos have included encounters with the rock star Somber and the Greek pop star Konstantinos Argyros. I'm looking for an agent, she said. I want one of the top 3. I tried contacting William Morris, but they told me I needed referrals to be considered. She entered Balthazar, strutting past the hostess. Hi, girls, she said. She made her way past the bar, scouring for stylish characters. There, in a red booth, was the singer-songwriter Sam Smith, wearing an unbuttoned wide lapel shirt, having lunch with 2 friends. She started recording. Sam, is this your first time here? She asked. Oh, I'm not doing interviews, Smith said. I'm eating. What's your Instagram, she said. Sam Smith. A Balthazar staff member approached and told Jupiter it was time to leave. Back outside, as she started walking to Chinatown, I asked if she felt rattled to be rejected by a celebrity. No, because everyone's the same to me, she said. I had a date once with Keith Richards. I saw it all already. In the kitchen of her small apartment in a creaky walk-up in Little Italy, Jupiter reminisced about the 1970s, when she was a fixture at Studio 54. I made him laugh, she said, gesturing towards a photo of herself with Andy Warhol at the fabled disco. There aren't many good pictures of Andy laughing. Judy Jupiter was born Judy Lynn DeLong in 1949 and grew up in Detroit as the daughter of a prosperous sheet metal engineer. As a teenager, she immersed herself in the Motown scene, sneaking out to the clubs where she saw the Temptations and Stevie Wonder. She hung out with mobsters in Greektown and shoplifted at malls to stifle her boredom. I was born quick, competitive, ambitious, and with a great body. But I was also born in the Midwest, Jupiter said. I'd go through 10 friends a day in my teens, burning them out, then picking up new ones. I was always bored growing up. At 24, she drove to New York with her 2 cats in a U-Haul truck. She got a job at Macy's, fell into the downtown punk scene, and began dating a CBGB's bartender. To help pay the rent, she did some nude modeling for Merrill Meisler, who became her photographic mentor. They documented Times Square with their cameras while working as waitresses in go-go bars and strip clubs. Some of their pictures appeared in the porn magazines Sherry and High Society. When Studio 54 opened, my hairdresser boyfriend told me it was going to be the hottest thing ever, Jupiter said. I believed him, because hairdressers know everything in New York. She asked around and learned that Studio 54's public relations agency was Gifford Wallace. She visited its offices one afternoon and cold-pitched herself as a publicity photographer. They put her on the list, along with Miss Meisler, and the gig involved making the disco look as glamorous as possible. Studio 54 felt like the roaring 20s when I got there, she said. It was a time when people still looked into each other's eyes. They didn't have a phone in their eyes. They had people in their eyes. Often wearing just a bikini, she aimed her Lisa at scenes of unguarded celebrity activity night after night. Moments seared into her mind include the supermodel Janice Dickinson hanging from the rafters as she sang to Mick Jagger. On another night, she found the Machiavellian political operative Roy Cohn slumped over on a couch in a dark corner. Jupiter led the way to her living room. Heaped throughout were portfolios of her Studio 54 photos and clippings of the columns she wrote for adult magazines. She flipped through some favorite shots. Next to the pictures were the annotations she had scribbled long ago. Debbie Harry, caught off guard by her flash in the bathroom line. "We were all waiting in line for a stall," Jupiter wrote. "She's wearing a peach antique dress." Christopher Reeve, seated with a pack of Marlboros. "I pinched his ass, and he turned around and smiled sweetly." Bianca Jagger on the dance floor with Halston. Bianca was at Studio 54 every night. Not always present was Mick, who was bored of going out every night to Studio 54. It's rumored that Studio 54 and her constant need to go out ended their marriage. As the club slid into decline in the 1980s, Jupiter made her exit. "I got bored," she said. She had done some modeling on the side, so she decided to start an agency of her own, Judith's Models. "We specialized in petite women like me, and I did really well," Jupiter said. 5'2" to 5'6". If they were any taller, they could go to Eileen Ford. They could go to Elite. But if they were petite, there was nowhere else to go. "Eventually, I got into a whole lot of trouble," she added. Her agency thrived into the 1990s with a roster of 80 models and an office on Sutton Place. Then she ran afoul of consumer affairs regulations, promising jobs to prospective models and operating without a license. Her reputation sank. Television news crews staked out her workplace. "They couldn't put me in jail for it," Jupiter said, "but any time I was in trouble, I ignored it. I'm still the same way." The city finally closed her business in 2004. A New York Post headline read, "Scam Model Agency Shut Down." "I'd once made a fortune, but I was always broke by Monday," Jupiter said. "I've been rich and I've been poor, even homeless. I was always lousy with money. My friends say I have an impulse control problem." As she entered her 70s and the pandemic hit New York, she lived off unemployment. That's when she started chronicling the city with her phone and posting dispatches to an Instagram account. Her first videos included her chatting up an elderly woman who sipped a margarita alone at a Mexican restaurant. Then she found her subject, Gen Z. "I'd become an angry person from everything that happened," she said, "but I started feeling like the old Judy again, the one that came to New York all starry-eyed, the girl from Studio 54, except I'd never gone viral before." That evening, Jupiter was hot on the case for more talent. She ambled through Little Italy, studying the tourists and the trattorias. "Wait, maybe them," she said, noticing a group of young women. They looked up. "Actually, nah," she said. "They're nothing special." Outside Sophia's restaurant on Mulberry Street, she was drawn to a slender man wearing a white beret and penny loafers. He was a 28-year-old host, L'arturo Posadas. She made her approach. "You filmed me a long time ago when you were just starting," he said. "Now you're doing well. I'm seeing your videos always. Everyone wants to be a star in New York, I guess." Jupiter had already trained her phone on him. "Want to do a spin for me?" Whale Time with Melissa McCarthy, Colin Jost, and the cast of SNL. It was all gratitude for the prehistoric beasts that once roamed the earth at the American Museum of Natural History Gala in New York by Alex Viduko. The streets outside the American Museum of Natural History were cold and lonesome on Thursday night. But Louis Armstrong's crooning of What a Wonderful World playing from the building's majestic entrance welcomed guests in tuxedos and glittering dresses. They quickly warmed up as they entered a boisterous cocktail party held beneath the 50-foot display of a Barosaurus. Power players from Manhattan's television, media, and political scenes traded industry gossip, while servers strode past dinosaur legs, holding trays of lobster tartlets and Hosin duck sliders. Also mingling were Saturday Night Live cast members, including Bowen Yang, Chloe Fineman, Kenan Thompson, Colin Jost, Sarah Sherman, and former hosts like Alec Baldwin and Melissa McCarthy. The museum's annual fundraising gala is co-chaired by Lorne Michaels, the SNL creator and executive producer, and the event has become something of an informal holiday season gathering for the cast. Every year we sit under the whale, Ms. Feynman said. Whale time, I like to call it. It's a special time to get to all hang out. We don't get to party outside of the show that much, and it's nice to give back to the city. We're not forced to come, said Mr. Thompson, wearing sunglasses. We are lovingly asked. He considered where he might slumber if given the chance to enjoy one of the museum's sleepover nights. The crystal room, he said. My mom's into crystals and seems to think they have abilities, so it would be interesting to tap into that. I can't feel it necessarily, but maybe you spend a night in a room full of them and that might change. Taking a moment's calm to himself in the Akeley Hall of African Mammals was the evening's performer Noah Kahan, the rootsy New England singer-songwriter. He wore a Paul Smith blazer embroidered with birds, butterflies, and turtles. I spent a lot of time here as a kid with my family, he said. One of my favorite cool memories was coming to the Natural History Museum. So we're definitely going to be playing some songs that touch on growing up. Soon the crowds moved through the halls, past a dodo bird, African elephants, and a giant clam, to reach the gala dinner inside the Milstein Family Hall of Ocean Life, which houses the museum's famed hanging blue whale. Guests were served plates of wintergreen salads and coffee-crusted filet mignon. A lively auction was led by Sarah Friedlander, who operatically stumped for lots like a private sleepover at the museum. As she galvanized the crowd to put up money for their offering, which invited an intimate group of children and their chaperones to slumber inside the museum, bidding sticks popped up like gophers across the room. This could be the built-in bar mitzvah that you've all been waiting for, she said. Core memories, people, core memories. The lot sold for $50,000. Finally, when Mr. Kahan took the stage with his band, the opening mandolin riff to All My Love rang out through the hall. The youngest SNL cast members rushed the stage area to bob and sway as if they were at a high school dance. Some of my biggest family fights ever were right here under this whale, said Mr. Kahan, before he tore into Deny, Deny, Deny. As the night closed out while people wiped sweat off their brows and walked through the cavernous museum to the coat check, guests approached Mr. Michaels to pay their respects. Prompted by a reporter, Mr. Michaels considered how the gala, which raised over $3 million for the museum, has also become something of an SNL holiday tradition. It's a night out for all of us, Mr. Michaels said, but we'll all be in the studio tomorrow morning. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Americans love a makeover, as long as it's invisible. The gutting of the East Wing of the White House and our national preoccupation with renovation, by Rhonda Gerlich. Last week, the White House announced that James McCreary, the architect directing construction of the new East Wing, who had pulled back from day-to-day involvement after disagreements with President Trump, would be replaced by a new firm in overseeing the next phase of construction. And while a White House official said that Mr. McCreary would serve as a consultant for the project, little is known about how or when the East Wing will be restored from its current state of demolition. How do we make sense of this national icon reduced to rubble with no end in sight? When we consider the context of its official explanation, that it was part of a needed renovation, it starts to feel less shocking and more like an extension of our cultural DNA. This is somehow even more unsettling. We watch home renovation shows in which people merrily take sledgehammers to houses as a staple of reality TV. We binge episodes of The Gilded Age that follow the construction of gargantuan mansions with giant ballrooms built by robber barons. We love rags to riches stories from Horatio Alger through Pretty Woman, American Idol, and all the Cinderella remakes. All of these are essentially life renovation stories with simple formulas. We lament someone's impoverished beginnings and then cheer their rise to success and wealth. Sometimes we enjoy the sgenic fruit that attends the opposite kinds of stories. Those about the ignoble side of wealth, or about the downfall of powerful people, as in The Great Gatsby, Citizen Kane, or The Queen of Versailles. The documentary turned TV series turned Broadway musical about a billionaire real estate developer and his beauty queen wife, and their quest to build America's largest, most expensive home, a modern Versailles. After the 2008 financial crisis, the home wound up an unfinished construction site piled with tchotchkes, including an antique guillotine. We also love stories of bodily renovation, known as makeovers or glow-ups. This is standard fare in celebrity journalism, on social media, and on TV. It's the world of before and after photos, and of get ready with me TikToks. It's speculation about which stars have gained or lost weight, or who looks much older, and of course, of who looks much younger and whether they've had work done. That kind of work, plastic surgery, is our favorite form of renovation. And while it was once a matter that people tried to keep private, cosmetic intervention has come out of the closet, morphing from personal secret into public badge of prestige. Now we admire impossibly taut new faces as testament to their owner's status and extreme wealth. Kris Jenner's candor about her facelift offers a recent example of this phenomenon. In the Queen of Versailles musical, the heroine, Jackie Siegel, undergoes multiple plastic surgery procedures, making her own body something of a construction site along with her new home. What has this to do with the White House? A lot. The White House has explained the East Wing's demolition as renovation and the necessary prelude to a multi-million-dollar ballroom. This is the architectural equivalent of a celebrity-style makeover, a redo to admire as luxury commodity, an old building rejuvenated, history erased. Mr. Trump has described the planned ballroom as an expensive, beautiful building and top of the line, as good as it can get anywhere in the world. It is no coincidence that this sounds like language the president might use to describe one of his own properties, as opposed to a federal building. Mr. Trump privately commissioned a similar project once before when he added the Donald J. Trump Grand Ballroom to Mar-a-Lago, his club in Palm Beach, Florida, in 2005, with details modeled on the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. Initial plans for the East Wing imagined a space with high ceilings and arched windows that would similarly echo the grandeur of Hall of Mirrors. Dreams of pre-revolutionary France die hard. Of course, when celebrities go under the knife, we never see the surgery, nor do we see the blood, bruising, or scars. These aspects just get disappeared before the eventual reveal of the transformation. This is why the honesty discourse around surgery is complicated. Think of it as a film with some segments edited out, making the transition seem magical and free of any gruesome in-between stages. We've grown very accustomed to this process. happy to ignore unbeautiful reality in favor of the fantasy of painless and miraculous transformation. But the photos of the East Wing demolition threaten our happy ignorance. The Treasury Department has reportedly prohibited any further photos of the East Wing's demolition site. We must not see the patient on the operating table. Instead, as is so often the case in our world of magical before and afters, we are expected to simply wait and then admire the change, without thinking too much about what happened in between. The man reweaving South Africa's story. Laduma Injokolo, the designer behind Maxosha Africa, is on a mission to embrace his country's history and traditions, rather than hide from them. Bayola Mzizi. Spending hours observing Laduma Injokolo, one can tell that he has long been haunted and propelled by a single question. What exactly makes a man? Mr. Injokolo, 38, who created Maxosha Africa, a luxury knitwear label that has found fans in Michelle Obama and Beyoncé, grew up in Port Elizabeth, a coastal city in South Africa's poorest province that changed its name to Gegabera in 2021. He, along with his older sister Tina, helped raise his two younger siblings after their mother, Lindalwa Njokolo, died when he was 15. She had instructed her children not to seek a guardian, insisting they had learned all they needed from her about how to keep a home, how to stand up for one another and themselves, and how to earn money selling knitted goods at the local market. Mr. Injokolo had to grow up quickly. As a teen, he underwent the traditional initiation rite of the Xhosa people, which is held high in the mountains. Before participants leave, they relinquish the belongings of their boyhood. Their relatives typically give them items intended to aid their transition to being young adults. The gifts often include expensive and high-quality Western clothing that is intended to symbolize a sartorial introduction to adulthood. You'd learn more about yourself as a character and about your cultural history in general, Mr. Injokolo said, before expressing his frustration with the clothing initiates were typically given. In the end, why were we wearing Western clothes? Why are we going to end up looking like English men? Mr. Injokolo, unsettled by the sight of young South African men outfitted in newsboy caps and Argyle sweaters, decided he wanted to be part of changing that tradition. His commitment to South Africa and the Xhosa culture has guided his career and has powered the current success of Maxosha Africa. Mr. Injokolo credits his mother for his career trajectory. Not long before she died, she took him to the Salvation Army under the pretense of purchasing a color television, something they did not have at home. But instead of a TV, she bought a knitting machine to make fabric for goods they would sell at the local market, much to the disappointment of his younger siblings at home, who were hoping for a television set. His mother was adamant that the children learn how to make their own clothing. The skill proved invaluable when, after his mother's death, Mr. Injokolo began knitting scarves and beanies as a student at Lawson Brown High School. He sold his accessories, which featured the school's colors, for prices lower than those of items sold at the official school store. The administration looked the other way after promising his mother they would help him after she was gone, and quickly built a customer base. After his sartorial revelation during his initiation rite, Mr. Injokolo enrolled in a course on textile design and technology at Nelson Mandela University and centered his thesis on creating alternative attire for recently initiated Xhosa men. The looks he designed were rooted in Xhosa history and culture and were made from wool and mohair sourced from Port Elizabeth. They featured bold colors and geometric patterns, a stark contrast to the subdued hues the young men were going through the initiation rite typically wore. His rethinking of that attire and the designs he came up with caught the attention of several industry figures, including Ravi Naidu, the founder of Design Indaba, a creative conference held annually in Cape Town, where Mr. Njokolo was asked to present his work before an audience of scholars, artists, and designers from around the world. He garnered praise for his work and received 300 orders, along with inquiries about his fashion label. But Mr. Njokolo had no label. He had only the samples he had presented, and he was strapped for cash. He took the names for the orders anyway, figuring he would find a way to fulfill them. One of the people impressed by his work was Haneli Rupert, the founder of Merchants on Long, a luxury boutique in Cape Town that stocks African designers. Ms. Rupert is also the daughter of Johann Rupert, the chairman of Richemont, one of the world's largest luxury conglomerates. What Laduma was doing already was completely different to anyone else in terms of the design, the integrity, the authenticity, Ms. Rupert said. Ms. Rupert offered to help Mr. Njokolo fulfill the 300 orders, paying him 450,000 rand, around $26,000. That's when Mr. Njokolo, who had spent his youth selling knitwear to his friends for 250 rand, around $15, realized people were willing to pay for luxury goods. "I'd never seen 10,000 rand in my account," he said. Mr. Njokolo founded Maxosha Africa in 2010, basing the label's offerings on traditional Xhosa patterns and motifs, but reimagined for a modern world. His goal was to bring cultural clothing into the mainstream. By doing so, he was also disrupting the South African fashion scene, where most designers produced Western-style clothing, leaving local heritage largely unexplored. Many brands that we come across, like Hermès, have heritage stories, which we find exciting, Mr. Njokolo said. But then we are not sharing our own as a form of decolonization of our own history to help us find a new form of confidence in our society and our people. Breaking from his peers, he deliberately focused on South African luxury consumers rather than seeking validation from abroad. Designers believe that to go international will buy them success, and it is exactly the opposite of that. Lucilia Bouzien, the founder of South African Fashion Week, said, "They often jump at the opportunity to go abroad, but they don't know what the culture is, what the buying structure is, what the buyers want, what they don't want. The markets are completely different." Mr. Njokolo instead believes in South Africa's luxury market. His brand operates 9 standalone stores, and even as he presented his collections during Paris Fashion Week, local shoppers in South Africa make up 90% of the company's sales. As the brand grew, one question kept coming up. Why are the clothes so expensive? Maxosha pieces range from the equivalent of $500 to more than $3,000, steep in a country where the median annual household income is the equivalent of $5,600 in 2023. I think that question was more, "How dare you?" than, "Why are you so expensive?" he said. The responsibility that I had was to simply open up more about the brand and my dream. I had to tell people about the materials and who made the garments, and after opening up, I didn't have to explain. A driving philosophy for Mr. Njokolo is a sense of Ubuntu, a South African value rooted in the interconnectedness of all people and the belief that one person's success is inseparable from the well-being of their community. It is why he has insisted on keeping his manufacturing in Southern Africa. Beyond South Africa, the brand also manufactures in Lesotho. I knew I wanted this brand to focus on social development, Mr. Njokolo said. The wool that is being sourced here has to have an impact on the community by creating jobs. With money saved from early sales, he invested in a manufacturing facility in Johannesburg, where he could oversee production and ensure that the work directly benefited the community. He now employs more than 300 people. His stores are intentionally spread across the country in places including smaller cities, where he negotiates with local governments for favorable rent and tax incentives. In exchange, the company hires from the local community. The business is also expanding internationally and is opening a store in New York's meatpacking district, a move he sees as an extension of his mission rather than a bid for Western validation. As his business grew, Mr. Njokolo stepped down as its managing director to focus solely on his role as its chief director. His youngest sister, Lily Ninquin, succeeded him in managing director. His two other siblings all have worked or currently work for the business too. We believe that our job is not to sell and that our job is to become cultural advocates, said Mr. Njokolo, who along with his siblings created Lindalwa Foundation in their mother's honor, offering support for students and mentorship for young professionals. I call myself a head diplomat of the brand because we are trying to push an agenda that has a vested interest in our culture, people, and our economy. Friends and family describe him as deeply committed, generous, and incredibly stubborn. His travel schedule can be daunting. Does it ever feel like a burden to run a company with a mission that entails so much more than just designing and selling clothes? He offered a common Isi Exosha phrase, Indoda Akai Kahali, which translates to, a man doesn't complain. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Modern Love. Why it's best to imagine the worst. After learning devastating news about our young son, we needed to feel connected to friends and family, not just exist beyond their imagination. By Tanmeet Sethi. I can't imagine what you're going through, she said, yet another acquaintance who had heard the news about my son. I'm so sorry. Here we go again, I thought, right in the produce aisle. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. Reaching for something to lean on, I found only a hard-knobbed ginger root. Not very comforting, but nothing would be. I knew better by now. I hadn't been able to put a finger on why this kind of interaction, common in the months since my husband and I learned of our son's dire diagnosis, stabbed so deep. Yes, it's always hard for people to know what to say when they find out your barely 3-year-old child has a disease that will slowly and painfully take his life. But something about the phrase, I can't imagine, hit particularly hard. I could see this fellow schoolmother feeling sad and uncomfortable, not wanting to presume she knew what I was going through. No one wants to imply that they know how it feels to be 9 months pregnant with your third baby and be told that your second child has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a fatal disease that, like ALS, ravages the body until there is no muscle left. My MO in this scenario was to go into reassurance mode. I'm okay. We're hanging in there. Life is what it is. Anything to end the person's distress and our encounter so I could get back to checking items off my grocery list. But this time was different. As though I was watching a cinematic performance of our exchange from theater seats, I suddenly was able to see with clarity why I felt so bad. I barely heard what she said next because I was lost in my own epiphany. Those aren't just empty words, I thought. She truly can't imagine my life. Meaning that my life is so horrible and otherworldly that it can't live within her imagination. That fateful Monday, months earlier, when my husband received the news of our son's diagnosis, he called me at work with 3 simple words, "Come home now." We sat on our porch bench for hours holding each other, crying, and even occasionally laughing at the absurdity of the moment. Truthfully, despite our son's delayed milestones and our nagging concerns, this diagnosis hadn't been in our imagination either. But here we were, facing the reality that our lives would never be the same. I struggled through my grief and anger, all the while trying to usher in the joy of a soon-to-arrive third child. How could I be joyful again, knowing I would watch our second child suffer and our dreams for the family we had imagined disintegrate? So I did what all humans are biologically primed to do. I avoided the pain at all costs, diving into work, newborn clothes shopping, house projects, anything I could find to keep my mind from being too silent to let the truest thoughts enter. I did what humans do best: distract and escape. But probably to no one's surprise but my own, it didn't work. I found myself withdrawing more, not wanting to connect with friends, and mechanically going through the motions of parenting. And frustratingly, people who meant well, like this acquaintance in the grocery store, made the pain even worse. Every time I would walk away feeling hollow and excluded. I assumed it was because of the exhaustion of feigning politeness, accepting their well wishes while somehow trying to make them feel better. Until that day, I had the revelation that hit me even harder than the pain inside. If she can't imagine my pain, how was I supposed to accept it was real? That wasn't the only well-intentioned condolence that fell flat. Others included the backhanded compliment, "God only gives these challenges to spiritually strong people." Toxic positivity, "At least your other 2 children are healthy." And worst of all, complete avoidance. I had good friends and even family members who flat out ignored me. But my angry comments unfolded only in my head. I was too scared to offend anyone. Even with people who said, "I can't imagine," I wanted to lash out. I'd think, well, it must be nice not to have to. But now I could not fathom how I had missed the nuance of why that phrase left me feeling so rattled. To exist beyond someone's imagination is to feel profoundly isolated. If you can't be imagined or seen, if you're in some spiritual elite of nightmarish tragedies, where does that leave you? On your own. Around the same time, a mentor encouraged me to practice gratitude, which frankly felt offensive. But I finally accepted her challenge. Nothing else was working anyway. To make a practice of my gratitude, she asked me to go to my son's bed every night after he went to sleep and say, "Thank you for his life, for him." At first I faked it. I could feel my body tensing under the invitation to accept that this diagnosis and the future it laid out were in fact real. Yes, even I did not want to imagine it. Until slowly but surely I felt my body softening with more easily flowing tears and resisting the exercise less. Something about saying thank you made me turn back toward my life instead of away. And now here I was again, getting a similar message, that avoiding pain was not an answer to surviving grief, or at least not a solution that was working for me. People were saying my life was unimaginable, perhaps unsurvivable, but maybe surviving this kind of sadness was about imagining this life too, as one worth living. It wasn't easy to view our circumstances this way, and not fast, but with this mentor's help, I started the slow and steady path back toward my pain and grief. For one, I practiced more gratitude for my own life, by seeing all the indestructible goodness that sits right next to the very hard. Even now, years later, as my son is in the latter stages of this brutal disease, I transfer him to his bed and see the way he lovingly looks at me as a gift. Nothing gets easier, but I have more ease with which to hold the hard. And I have changed the way I respond to others in pain, choosing to invite them in rather than turn them away. Instead of saying, "I can't imagine," I might extend a simple, "That sounds so hard," or offer the human truth, "I don't know what to say, but I'm here with you." I even have had the energy to confront some of the close people in my life who had entirely skirted my son's diagnosis or just stopped calling altogether. They all had the same version of the excuse. I just didn't know what to say. How about a simple "I love you," I said. Over time, it became clearer to me that my sense of belonging and connection were directly related to managing my grief and even to reclaiming my joy. Soon I began to respond to that scenario with the acquaintance in the market differently. Rather than simply reassuring well-wishers, I tried to connect to them. Instead of smiling back, I encouraged them to use their imagination as a bridge to me and my life. I really wish you would try to imagine my pain, I now say. Not because our pain is the same, but because imagining it will connect you and me, and maybe even more deeply to your own pain. This usually leads to a stunned look, followed by an awkward silence, long enough that each time it happens I must steel myself before trying it again. But in the end, it tends to start a conversation in which we can get somewhere better than retreating to our separate islands of pity and pain. And for that, I am grateful. I think my new response is more loving and generous than the polite ones I used to give. It opens up rather than closes off, encouraging us to see each other, to imagine a life unlike your own. As a plus, I walk away feeling more connected to them, not less, and even more connected to my own pain. I feel like I belong here, not because my pain is just like someone else's, not because it's a blessing, not because I'm able to practice gratitude. I belong, everyone does, because we all have pain, and connecting to each other's pain is what makes us more human, and even, dare I say, more joyful. Social cues. How can I stop my wife from badgering our friends about climate change? A reader's wife is angry about what she sees as insufficient commitment to the cause of environmentalism, alienating the couple's friends. By Philip Galanes. My wife has become an eco-warrior. She has strong feelings about the environment and other people's carbon footprints. She challenges our friends repeatedly about their lifestyle choices. I agree with her in principle, but I can't support her moral outrage. It's become clear to me that her behavior is off-putting to many people we see, and it's uncomfortable for me and for them when she raises the same issues repeatedly. She seems to care more about the climate crisis than our relationships. I try to see this issue through my wife's eyes, so I understand her need to speak up, but it's so uncomfortable. Help, spouse. I am going to assume that you have raised this issue with your wife privately and have not made much headway. It would be odd to keep quiet about your growing discomfort and that of your friends, but only to broach the subject with me. Still, I have a suggestion that may be persuasive to your wife. Offer her an alternative that increases the chances of changing people's behavior. She probably knows already, but may need to be reminded, that there are few turnoffs more potent than being bullied by moral crusaders. I wouldn't start there, of course. I would begin by praising her, rightfully, for her commitment to an important issue that receives little practical attention. Among my friends and neighbors anyway. We believe in human-caused climate change, but we are not altering our transportation diets or energy habits to reduce our carbon footprints. So, after expressing your solidarity, turn to her presentation. Tell her you've seen friends pull back from her when she becomes strident. Remind her that she isn't likely to shame people into making lasting changes in their behavior, and ask her to consider posing her important question more gently. How can we call something a crisis and still not take steps to ameliorate it? A soft conversation here, with taking and listening on every side, is more likely to change people's habits than an angry attack is. How long does it take to write It's Perfect? My daughter-in-law reads avidly, takes writing classes, and writes short stories. Given her interests, I asked if she would read a novella I wrote. She said she would be happy to. She knows the work is inspired by events I lived through, but it is not a rehashing of them. It is a work of fiction. I told her that, and it says so on the title page. I gave her a copy 6 months ago, and she hasn't mentioned it since. I don't understand this, and her unresponsiveness bothers me. Should I say something? Writer. As a fellow writer, I commiserate. You made yourself vulnerable by sharing your creative work with someone you trusted, only to have her sit on it for 6 months. It's possible that your daughter-in-law disliked the novella and doesn't know how to tell you. It's also possible that the real-life events on which the work is based, which sounds ominous, may have complicated her response to it. But in my experience, as unlikely as this may seem, your daughter-in-law probably hasn't gotten around to reading it yet. I would ask her when she plans to get back to you. You can't pretend you never gave her the novella, but think twice before showing her any more of your work. A carton of headaches. My baby's nanny takes food from my kitchen, butter and eggs, for instance, when I'm at work. This leaves me scrambling when I come home and need to prepare dinner for my family. I've discussed this with her several times and even confined the food I intend to use in a separate drawer labeled Do Not Touch, but I still find things missing. The issue? She is a consistent and loving presence for my son, and I never worry about him when he is with her. Should I let this go or find a new nanny? Mother. I know how hard it can be to find reliable childcare, so I would try a different tack to get to the bottom of this odd situation. Rather than labeling food as off limits, ask your nanny what's happening to it. Is she feeding it to your son? Eating it herself? Or taking it home? Depending on her wages and other circumstances, you may be willing to feed her when she is working, and you can plan for it. Unpredictability seems to be the crux of your complaint, not expense. Still, you have no obligation to do this, and some people would have no qualms about firing a nanny who took food. Chestnuts aren't the only things getting roasted here. I am planning a holiday meal and am faced with the awkward possibility that my brother will invite his girlfriend, a gold-digging stripper, who has caused him to dip into his IRA to support her lavish tastes. I find such women repugnant. Should I keep my trap shut? Brother. If we took a straw poll, I suspect your brother's girlfriend would not top the list of repugnant characters in this story. Whatever lawful work people do to support themselves is none of your business. And if your brother is foolish enough to sap his retirement accounts, that's on him, not his girlfriend. I vote for keeping your trap shut. For help with your awkward situation, send a question to socialq@newyorktimes.com. There's a wasp nest in the living room on purpose. These variegated, collaged-looking nests, fetching up to $250 each, are a recent fixation in interior design. By Misty White Seidel. Think of it as an alternative houseplant, or a method for decorating an indoor space with a bit of the great outdoors. Wasp nests have become surprisingly sought-after home decor commodities, with some priced at up to $250 per specimen. The nests have a kind of odd beauty that has compelled people to hang them in their living rooms, offices, and dining spaces. They are one of a kind, hard to retrieve, and, unlike houseplants, cannot be cultivated. As swaths of the country decorate their homes with fall's bounty, pumpkins, gourds, spooky bric-a-brac, a select group climbs multi-sensory ladders to harvest these prized nests after their inhabitants largely die off in the first few autumn frosts. When brought indoors as decoration, the wasp's one-time home assumes the role of a natural sculpture, with a look that both elevates living spaces and evokes an air of danger, said Anthony Vesnaver, a founder of the Newburgh Vintage Emporium in Newburgh, New York. For years, Kyle Vierling, a florist in Sylvania, Ohio, had one such nest displayed on his living room shelf, with the branches it was built on still attached, further accentuating its organic form and make. Recently, Mr. Vierling incorporated the specimen, which he described as special and ephemeral, into an arrangement using Japanese Ikebana principles, mixed with other forged components. City dwellers looking to add a touch of nature to their homes are often the ones interested in the nests, Mr. Vesnaver said. He said he has sold 3 at his antique mall in the last month. It's people with a keen view on aesthetics, Mr. Vesnaver added. He attributed their popularity to a reaction against mass-produced interior products. Only one stinging insect creates these variegated, collaged-looking nests, the North American bald-faced hornet, a type of wasp. It spends much of its brief life cycle, which lasts from spring to winter, building these hanging abodes for its colony and queen. A small nudge of one of these nests can dent its outer layer, and therefore shipping them is risky business. While the nests at Mr. Vesnaver's store cost $40 to $70, many sellers on online marketplaces like Etsy price theirs upwards of $150, with shipping fees sometimes hovering around $100. Dan Duchesne is one such Etsy dealer selling bald-faced hornet nests for luxury prices, including a 16-inch specimen listed for $270. He likened it to nature's version of an architectural model. Mr. Duchesne, who lives in Pembroke, Ontario, across the Ottawa River from Quebec, said he recently sold another nest to an engineer who appreciated the complexities of the habitat that the hornets had built for themselves. That notion of domesticity and hard work, Mr. Duchesne thinks, is part of their appeal. While some buy the nests, others harvest them straight from the source, outside and often very high in tree canopies. There's only a short window of time to retrieve the nests responsibly. One must wait long enough after the first few frosts to ensure that a nest is empty, but act soon enough so that its paper-thin construction is not damaged by wind, rain, or hungry birds. Nathan Brown, a horticultural designer in Reno, Nevada, purchased a 30-foot ladder to nab a larger nest that was lodged high in a tree at a local park. While he returned the $400 ladder soon after, he has kept the nest as part of a dried floral arrangement in his dining room. Mr. Brown has since acquired a second nest and mounted it to his wall like an artwork. It's a conversation piece, he said. The nest's unique appearance comes from how they are built. Bald-faced hornets chew wood like dead tree stumps and backyard decks and create a pulp-like material that becomes a paper. It's laid down in a particular pattern that ultimately becomes a series of interconnected rainbow-shaped sheets, said Teak Jacques, the proprietor of Coastal Stinging Solutions, a pest control business in Belfast, Maine. Mr. Jacques has come to appreciate the nest's look, so much so that he has a collection of some 150 of them displayed in his home. There's no comparison between them, he said. To me, it's an art. Wasp nests have also proven a prolific source of inspiration for artists. The fiber artist Kei Sikimachi has used nest paper to craft small home objects like bowls. In 2019, the New York City-based artist Juan Antonio Olivares created an immersive installation in Berlin with 2 larger bald-faced hornet's nests accompanied by sound and lighting effects. The paper they create is so beautiful and painterly. It could have been done with a brush, said Wendy Wall, an artist in West Kingston, Rhode Island, who has deconstructed wasp nests found in her own yard for a series of collage works. Ms. Wall often works with natural materials she finds on her property. At one point, she was so committed to working with mushrooms that she started growing them. The wasp nest paper, however, has proved more difficult. I can't create a nest, Ms. Wall said. I have to wait for them to do it. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the December 14th issue of the New York Times Style section. Your reader has been Laura. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the USA Today. Following that at 2 o'clock, we have episode number 2 of You Belong Here by Megan Miranda. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, broadcasting daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers.
The Niagara Frontier